Hey, Cavs fans, German, Spencer Davies back with you. We said we'd be in the exact same spot. We lied a little bit.
X did not mark the
Not
spot.
the exact same spot. The sun was giving us some trouble. But we are still out here in Independence at the Cavs practice facility where we just concluded a little over
40
minutes ago. The introductory press conference for new head coach Kenny Atkinson. I think there's some bigger takeaways from everything that he talked about. I would say one of the biggest ones, obviously, is just how he's going to handle the rotation of Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland. We know there's maybe some redundancies there that we've been a topic of conversation all offseason. But he spoke very glowingly of Darius Garland in particular and how he killed them when he was at Brooklyn and how excited he is to work with him and get those guys together. And the exact line he used was, yeah, that's what they're paying me to figure out is how those guys fit together. So I think it was kind of another indication that this organization is moving forward with this idea of, hey, we have what we have. And obviously that could change on the free agency's open. But, we're trying to see what Kenny Atkinson can do with this group and pull the most out of these guys and hopefully get more than J.B. Bickerstaff was able to.
A lot of stuff coming out of their mouths regarding just continuity and keeping it status quo. So that's something that probably a lot of Cavs fans aren't too happy with. And, you see the moves that are being made around the league right now. Paul George going to the Sixers. You got Mikal Bridges getting traded to the Knicks. A lot of these teams around them getting better. They believe in this core. And I think the more and more as this offseason goes along, you're going to see that. And we thought maybe it was posturing before from Koby Altman at the end of season press conference. Maybe not. Maybe they're just going to try and run it back with a different type of philosophy, different type of coach. And Kenny Atkinson seems like he's very excited to work with these guys and try some new things. And it started with Evan Mobley.
Yeah, and that's great transition because one of the other big topics of conversation that came up during the press conference was Evan Mobley and what he envisions for the next phase of his game. I mean, you guys as Cavs fans know it's been a topic of conversation the last 3 years. What's the next step for Evan Mobley? Is he going to become a three-point shooter? Is he going to handle the ball a little bit more? And that point specifically is something that Kenny Atkinson hit on. He said flat out, he envisions Evan Mobley handling the ball more, whether it's bringing it up the floor, whether it's a 5-out look, and he's kind of facilitating things a little bit, and getting the ball then back to Donovan Mitchell potentially, and they kind of rotate things around. So it sounds like the visions that we've all kind of been talking about, hey, how can you work Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley as kind of the focal points of the offense, seem to be at the forefront of his mind and his philosophy in terms of what he wants to do. I think if there's anything you take away from this press conference today, that's maybe the most refreshing thing to hear for Cavs fans is that his goal is to, as we kind of figured with the hiring of Kenny Atkinson, he's a great developmental coach. I want to get more out of Evan Mobley and utilize him in a different way than what we saw with J.B. Bickerstaff.
And what stuck out to me was him talking about utilizing Evan in transition. And pushing the ball up the floor. And we saw glimpses of that. Grabbing a rebound, pushing it down the floor, finding your teammates, or even taking it coast to coast. That's something that Evan is very much so capable of. Got to work on the handle a little bit, but utilize him more creatively in the offense. And if Evan's involved in that way, I think that you can see massive improvements from this team. And the thing is with Evan, you get him stepping out for three, you get him, shooting some hook shots and whatnot. I think face-up game is where he's at its best. I think you can utilize him in handoff situations, whether that's having Darius Garland take them or Donovan Mitchell take them. Get him the ball with some momentum going towards the basket, and good things will happen. But what really stuck out for me with Kenny, too, is someone asked him about the player development type of coach, and they can only get him so far and whatnot. Kenny's like, that's a buzzword. That's a buzzword. We're always developing guys, no matter what their age is. And he mentioned Donovan Mitchell and how Donovan Mitchell still has some room that he could work with him. He's already a top 15 player. Why can't we get him to be a top 5 player? Why can't we get these guys to get better throughout their careers, no matter what their age is? And it's not like Donovan is somebody that's old. Like he's somebody that's been in the league for a minute, and he's a veteran. And I'm sure we'll get to the contract extension comments from Koby Altman as well.
It's coming.
But these guys just don't stop. They don't stop developing. He's going to still be hands-on with Jared Allen, still be hands-on with Karis LeVert, guys that he knew from his past in Brooklyn. But it seems like he's just got a very solid confidence and belief in what he does. And a lot of that credit goes to his experience in Golden State, and a lot of that credit goes to the experience in Los Angeles with Ty Lue, and then obviously what he had to do in Brooklyn.
Yeah, and I just on the Evan Mobley thing one more time, because I do think, like, as you look around, you brought up earlier, Paul George going to I almost said the Clippers because it's where he used to play. The 76ers, Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks. Like, you see the Eastern Conference getting better. And I understand why there's probably a lot of fans out there a little bit panicked. Like, what are the Cavs going to do? Now they got to kind of catch up here. I do think, like, if they do run it back, the one thing that you're holding out hope for is Evan Mobley takes that leap that you've been hoping for, and he becomes more of a focal point. He ascends to being now maybe a top 20 player himself, a top 25 player himself, and him and Donovan Mitchell can play really well off of each other. I think that kind of is the goal here. And to hear Kenny Atkinson talk about some of that stuff and talk about how he's going to continue to try to develop some of these guys that are a little bit older and veterans, but not really that old, I think that all matters. One other big takeaway I had, and then I'll give it to you for any final thoughts and just kind of philosophically what he had to say, and then we'll get to the Donovan Mitchell thing. But I thought it was fascinating. Just he talked a lot about what he picked up after he left Brooklyn. And we all kind of know how that got a raw deal a little bit, getting run out of town when the two superstars and Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving show up and sort of take the reins. They didn't want to play for him anymore. One of the big parts of his sort of falling out there was that he was playing Jared Allen a lot, and they really wanted DeAndre Jordan to play. And so once he was gone, DeAndre Jordan assumed the starting center role. So like there were some, touch and go moments as he has to manage these egos of superstar players. And he just talked about going out to LA, working with the Clippers under Ty Lue, seeing how he does things. Then going to Golden State and seeing how Steve Kerr does things with this dynastic Warriors team that we all certainly know. And one of the big things he hit on was with the superstar players, having individual conversations with them, like one-on-one conversations with them. And the big thing I like, one of the best parts, I think, of his description, how you handle those guys, was he said, I think that you were always in partnership with your star players. And I mean, I thought that resonated across the room, and just in terms of like what you think about when you think about how you manage an NBA roster, that falls in line with how the Cavs have treated Donovan Mitchell this entire offseason, right? Like, we want your input on things. We want to make sure you're on board with this coach, all these different conversations. So I thought that was fascinating to hear that he's learned some things from some of his now previous stops before he gets here on how to handle that situation a little bit better as he steps into a situation with a star player in his own right in Donovan Mitchell.
And players will know if you're not connecting with them. They'll know if you're not putting the effort in. He's talking about going out there and, like you said, individual conversations, but I'm talking about individual sessions with these guys on the court, rebounding for somebody, going out there and, just kind of being out there and in the grind with them. And that's really important for a coach to connect with a player. And
to earn respect, for sure.
Exactly. And, I'm sure that we're going to get to, obviously, the philosophical side, but before the philosophical side, it's always about the personal side. And the personal side is so important today's, NBA as well, just because these guys will see right through you if you're not meeting well.
Anything else that stood out to you from like a tactical standpoint that Kenny Atkinson brought up in terms of things that maybe he wants to do differently than what we saw with JB Bickerstaff?
Well, he directly was asked threes and pace. Is that what we're going to see here because of that's your philosophy, or is that because of what the personnel was in Brooklyn? And he's like, nope, that's exactly, that's who I am. I want to make sure that I meet with these guys and I understand what their play style is like and what they like to do and all that. But at his core, he believes in playing fast and shooting threes. Mentioned threes multiple times throughout this press conference. And that, to me,
again, music to Cavs fans' ears.
That points directly to Darius Garland for me, man. It really does. And when I think about what he could do with Darius Garland, one name comes to mind, and that's D'Angelo Russell. He was somebody after his time in LA, the first stint.
Now he's been there like 3 times.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly. We're losing count with D'Lo. But he goes over to Brooklyn, and what happens? Kenny ends up letting him shoot the ball and letting him play. And he had a good duo going there in the backcourt. And D'Angelo just seemed to really pick it up and shoot threes like crazy. And it was almost like letting him have the freedom to do it. I think Darius can play off of Donovan in that sense if he's the one going off ball. And I'm sure that they're going to have times where they delegate and maybe Darius brings it up and Donovan's going off ball. Or, there's all these sorts of things. And also, in addition to that, talking about Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, why they can't work on the floor, why they can work on the floor. He brought up an example from Golden State. He talked about how Draymond Green and Kevon Looney were on the floor together and they won playoff games. Now, I know that's probably not the sexiest sounding thing, but I would venture to guess that Jared Allen and Evan Mobley could be much more talented than that twosome as far as the offensive end of the floor goes.
Yeah.
And, I just said that about Golden State. The way that he described the Darius and Donovan situation was almost like when he was coaching Steph Curry and Jordan Poole. And that's when Jordan Poole, before he, went and got paid and ended up going out to, the Wizards and that trade and whatnot. But there's things that he's experienced on the way here that he can really use as head coach of the Cavs. And I think that's really important. Yeah. And he was very grateful for those experiences.
You also asked him about depth, and we know that was an issue for JB at times. He talked about using his depth, but he really only liked to run 7 to maybe 8 guys deep. Generally.
It really was, yeah.
That was something that bit him in the butt. I know a lot in the playoffs and fans really criticizing his tactics. That's something that sounds like Kenny Atkinson really emphasizes, and he talked about using like 11 men deep.
Yeah, and that's why I asked him straight up. I was like, how important is depth? How do you view the depth here? And when it comes, I wish I would have said it as clear as I'm saying it to you guys. I kind of fumbled through that one, but got to the point. Kenny was basically talking about your 11th guy can be the most important player for you in Game 4 of a playoff series.
Yeah.
It's instilling belief in the guys that aren't the core 4, that aren't the focal points, because then they're going to want to play for you that much harder. They're going to obviously have the reps that they need in that time. And what happens when you have, 10, 11 guys going during the regular season. Also, I think we don't talk about this too much, but guys are going to just be healthier. Yeah. They're going to be healthier because they're not playing 35 minutes a game. He was talking about playing guys like 25 minutes a game, 25 to 30 minutes a game, instead of, what we're used to here in Cleveland is seeing the Stars play 36 to 40 minutes, anywhere between that. And that's going to take a toll, especially throughout a long 82 game season, going into a playoffs where you're going to need the best from your best players, and they're just gassed by that point, or they have nicks and knacks, injuries and whatnot.
I like that, nicks and knacks.
Knick-knack injuries is what I was trying to go for. I don't know why I also did this, but we did.
I like it.
But yeah, it's important to be able to utilize the guys that are on your roster. That's why Koby Altman, Mike Gansey, and Brandon Weems brought them in.
The last thing, we put it off long enough. Koby Altman was asked directly. We figured it was going to come up at some point.
Surprised it took that long.
Yeah, I am too. It was towards the end of the press conference too. But somebody asked him directly about the status of their conversations with Donovan Mitchell. Are they close on an extension? Koby Altman did the thing he always likes to do. I don't want to get into specifics, blah, blah, blah. He did say they were out in L.A. That was widely reported already. Visited him at his Spida elite camp that he's got going on out there. And he basically talked about how Donovan's in like a really good headspace and they feel really good about things. And then the buzz part of the conversation, the buzzwords everybody wanted to hear, were that he mentioned that Donovan's very invested in what the team is doing right now. And he also said that he was not just very, very, very pro Cleveland. So for what that's worth, sounds like they're still on good footing. The other thing he did say was, you can talk about Donovan Mitchell like he's a Cavalier, because it's not like he's in free agency right now. He is under contract with Cleveland for next year. So it's just about getting a max deal done so that they hopefully have him longer term.
And I think they wouldn't have brought up his name in the press conference. I don't think Kenny would have brought up his name as many times in the press conference if something didn't get done. But it is kind of interesting and piques, a little bit of intrigue. The fact that Koby did seem a little bit iffy on what he was talking about with
it was very
Donovan.
vague.
It wasn't as confident tone.
Yeah, it was very vague. I mean, to start the answer, we're talking about.
He goes so.
But even to start the answer, sort of beating around the bush and being like, we just saw Donovan. He's in a really good headspace. Like, that doesn't answer the question. Like, that's talking about him.
It's probably a semantics thing, agent wise.
Yeah, and he's trying to be careful. But it was interesting that he kind of tried to navigate that very gingerly. That could just mean, like you said, they're negotiating.
A lot of people in my mentions are pointing out every single word from that, as we said that they would. They're going to dissect every single word from that. The big one that they're dissecting right now is hopefully we'll have some news on that for you on that front soon.
Yeah.
And to really think about what else could be holding this up, maybe Evan Mobley's rookie max extension also comes into play here.
It's true.
And that's maybe a hold up.
Because once they do that, they're past that first apron. Like, they blaze past that first apron of the salary cap. So then you're really restricted on what you can do. So,
and Gansey really talked about that second apron too on Thursday.
And they have a mid-level exception, non-taxpayer right now that they can use to maybe sign a player. So maybe you want to get something done with a player before you extend anybody. Sure. There's a lot of different things that's in play with that for sure. But it's still a wait and see situation as we sit here today on Donovan Mitchell. And I understand why many of you guys watching, fans out there, might be a little bit concerned because you're seeing all these other moves happening. And you're like, it's that meme of the guy, the stick figure with the stick saying, hey, do something. So I get it. But we're taking a wait and see approach for now. We'll just have to see how it all plays out. We joked that the news will probably break on Thursday when everyone's
right on 4th of July, guys.
Right, yeah, everyone's going to be at the
We're going to be on a boat. We're going to be on a boat. You know,
living the dream. And then, hey, now you got to write a story about Donovan Mitchell signing a contract.
I'll be FaceTiming on Cavs Insider from a boat.
We'll be doing this video from our backyards at barbecues, at the fireworks display we're going to, whatever. But we'll see what happens. Guys, as always, we appreciate you jumping on in with us. We hope you enjoyed the analysis. I always enjoy doing this suspense whenever we get a chance to. Hopefully we'll have some more news that we get to connect on here in the coming days or weeks. But in the meantime, you can follow along and find more content like this at the Cavs Insider YouTube channel. And, of course, at si.com/NBA/Cavaliers. We'll talk to you guys soon. If not before Independence Day, have a great 4th of July and take care.